Good morning, TC fam. This is Coffee with Ryan and just random thoughts. I guess a continuation of the series that Dimitri and I have been working on during this weird time of just how things are affecting us and what we're thinking about during this global pandemic. The one that I've talked about previously on the podcast in little bits, but I want to dive into a little bit more here, is centralizes around this question of like, who is our leader? And to step back a minute, the field of behavior analysis has this area called systems analysis or behavioral systems analysis. And it's fascinating to me because basically you're taking this way in which we approach human behavior, trying to predict it, measure it, and you're looking at it not just on the individual level, which we know really well, but how does this interact with the larger system? And so you have to figure out what your big nodes are, your variables, to be able to jump into. This could be any sort of a level. It's really similar to a cultural analysis. So what you're doing is you're looking at something maybe in your local area, your neighborhood. Maybe you're looking within an organization. Maybe you're looking at how an organization's services impact your local economy. Things like that. And it's really difficult to run like controlled experiments on, but you can start to figure out what anecdotally or through some evidence is impacting what and start to better form how you approach the system or redesigning it or influencing it and things like that. And one of them that was really interesting is how we form a body of knowledge in science. That is, how do we fill our gaps, whether it's practice to research to practice, or other things like that. And way back in the day, there was a gentleman named J.R. Cantor that proposed a system for this. And the idea was a logician of science. Now, I don't know if this would be a single person. It makes more sense to be like a body or an entity. But essentially what it was is someone that was overseeing, or some entity or group of people that were overseeing and saying, okay, we have a lot of resources tied into here. Maybe we should focus some over here. Maybe we should rethink the research because we have this big gap and it looks like it's, going to hinder us if we don't. And you can think about this in a lot of different ways. So for example, the amount of people that work in autism-related disabilities. The website on BACB, their survey is now like 5 or 6 years out of date. By my estimates, looking at that, because they say it's, about 70% autism or whatnot, but there's a lot of people that work in areas that support those autism service providers. It looks to be roughly 85%. Now, if you're looking at a business and you had 85% of your revenue tied in this one stream, really risky. The whole idea is that you diversify. And that's where something like this logician of science would be placed in like a good value-added perspective of, okay, we have a lot of resources here. How could we maybe diversify our field to not rely on just this one in case some giant catastrophe happened like we're going through now? But it also applied to really interesting areas when it comes to research. We know, for example, the 4-step model of behavioral skills training works: instruction, models, rehearsal, and feedback. And there's a point in which, reinforcement works, BST works, we should be allocating in other areas. And we don't have this. That is, we don't have this logician of science. We don't have a clear leader in the field. And I don't know if this is a bad thing. Mainly the idea of being able to have like this free market mentality and go out there and pursue whatever it is that you want is really cool. And nobody telling you, where you need to focus your time is awesome. And it's very much a part of a lot of different cultures, America included, where I'm from. But in a time like now, without, I guess it exacerbates that issue of how we haven't really had good focus on the systems level and what we've built as a group called behavior analyst, or as a group called board certified behavior analysts. And the interesting thing is there's not one person to blame, but there are roles and entities that could work on this a little bit better. In the webinar that we talked about ethics on, there was a point made that the issue is that a lot of the major nodes of these systems analysis that we would start to talk about, BACB, ABI, APBA, they don't all get along. There's a lot of history there, a lot of issues. I'm actually going to have one of these examples brought up in our future release here in a couple weeks on location with Pat Fryman, talking about his experience of trying to be a president of ABI and how that led and the issues that came about as that. It's pretty insane what you hear when he releases that. And I guess my point there is we built this. We have certain people that influence more than others, or certain entities that have influence over it more than others. We don't have that connecting person, our Dr. Fauci, or our, liaison for different parties that should be there. And it's concerning. And I think right now highlights the need for us to rethink things. Good old Cantor, I said that I'd mention him. He's the one that really put this all together. Believe it or not, in the 1940s, I believe. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, I'm going to link a bunch of his stuff down below. But this is it, essentially. There's a bunch of his work. Some of my favorites. Logic of Modern Science, and an Inner Behavioral Survey. So I guess my question to you today is, who's responsible? I think it's everybody. How do we move forward? Well, we need certain entities and nodes of this behavioral system to be able to work together and move forward and try to progress. And hopefully the conditions are set now, even though we should have been able to do this years and decades ago. Hopefully the conditions are here now to kind of alter the value of everything and force this collaboration and rethink to happen. So I just want to acknowledge there's a bunch of leaders in organizations, in different entities. It's that connecting bit. That's what I think we need to do here. I kind of miss that. Shout out to everyone that's trying to lead in this situation in their respective places. How do we bring it together? How do we get unified? That's the question. Hope you're doing well. Love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Linked down below are the resources, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.